All right, great. Well, I'm pleased to be here today with Robert Koval. He is Chief Operating Officer at Teambase, a modern InsurTech platform helping carriers and MGAs move faster with better underwriting, policy management, and core system automation. Robert brings a powerful blend of product ops and AI experience. And today on the InsurTech Leadership podcast, we will dig into what it takes to scale tech in one of the most complex industries in the world. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Joshua. It's very nice intro. Thank you.
Yeah, great. So, maybe we could just start, and you can share a little bit about Teambase and kind of the business model, and maybe also the company structure, because I know that's a little bit interesting too.
So, Teambase is an InsurTech. We started about 15 years ago, and I think our first product, BenefitNet, is still around and going very strong. It's a platform that targets the either insurers or MGAs or brokers, and sort of provides the customer-facing interface. It kind of manages all of the processes and customer interactions. From policy management to claims, but we also kind of cover the GI component, mobile apps, etc. I think we've identified a long time ago that customer interaction endpoint, in other words, how customers are dealing with the brokers and insurers, is still pretty simplistic, and in certain parts of the world, it's really old school, archaic. It's all as bad as sending emails and exchanging data via Excel sheets, etc. So that's why we built the platform. In terms of our focus, we focused on, we started out in the Middle East, in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and we kind of grown from there. Right now, we have an office in Ireland, but in terms of kind of our overall team, we've got people in pretty much most of the European countries. And in terms of customer base, we're working with customers from Singapore, Hong Kong. With quite a few customers in Africa, some parts of Europe, and also Middle East. So very interesting times for sure.
So I'm curious about a couple things, maybe just strategy wise, or even at the tactical level too. And you mentioned certain countries, maybe the industry's even more archaic. So was the decision to start the business in Dubai, based on an observation about that, or was it something different?
Part of it was observation, right? And to an extent, the initial gap and idea was validated with the industry insiders. Original, one of the original sort of ideas behind this was actually one of our first clients, right? The gentleman, his name is Guy Bilcom. He used to work for a sort of big international brokerage, and again, one of the things that always bugged him was this endless and mundane exchange of the information, which was very inefficient, etc. And again, an idea for a portal, for an online platform, that sort of sparked the discussion, and I think I went into at the time we. So validated the idea, said to ourselves that this is something that could be built into a product, ever since then, looking at the sort of emerging markets where we mostly operate at the moment, I think the proposition has resonated. Having said that, we have been looking at been looking at the United States, we've been looking at UK, and some other parts of Europe where I think these propositions are not new. Okay, but again, having said that, the industry, the insurance industry as a whole, in my opinion, has got still a long way to go to provide the right level of tech, both to the internal employees, but also to the customers.
And so you mentioned the original idea came out of a broker. So are brokers sort of your primary focus now? I saw some material referencing carriers and MGAs. So
they are. So I think the brokers are a sweet spot. Okay, but we do work with the carriers. We do work with MGAs as well. But brokers is where I think is the area that we understand the most. Again, we've had a few implementations with the carriers, but both in terms of how some of the parts of our products are structured, etc. The brokerage is our sweet spot. I think that's the segment in the kind of overall value chain that tends to be from a technology point of view underserved the most, in my opinion.
And so, can you share a little bit about sort of what the specific problem is you're solving, or the problems you're solving now that the company and the product suite has evolved over time?
So if I really kind of boil down to two sort of separate products that we have, or kind of the suites of products that we have, so one is a product called BenefitNet, and I think the easiest way to explain it is to use an analogy. So it is really an equivalent of what internet banking would be for banks, right? So ultimately, it provides capabilities for your clients to log into the portal and see all of the risks that they've got written with you as a broker or as an insurer, and effectively manage those policies, right? So in very often it's the management that tends to be quite time consuming, right? So managing all of the additions, for example, in the medical policy, right? Adding new members, deleting them, etc. This is the bit where that's the bit that tends to be, from the process point of view, very inefficient. Again, quite insecure. And this is the area where we play, right? We simply provide a platform that allows the brokers, but also the customers, to their customers, to effectively access those services online, and simply basically do the self-service, rather than sending an email like people used to 20, 30 years ago.
Got it.
So the other part of the platform, sorry, because you asked, I haven't finished. So the other part of the sort of portfolio is a solution that we're calling Quick Quote Hub, and that really focuses on sort of quotation and a customer acquisition, right? So ultimately, it has got two different sort of ways of operating. One is simply provide quotations online. Okay, so if you, for example, a broker and want to allow, let's say, your small and medium enterprises, your SME clients, to get a quote for life insurance or for third-party liability insurance online, we can essentially spin it off, provide a few underwriting criteria, do the pricing, and present the customer directly with the quote that they can potentially already buy as well, right? So it's really sort of that click-to-buy journey. The other thing that we're doing as part of the sort of the same suite is, in case of the corporate clients, where very often we see that when a broker serves the corporate clients, they typically ask for individual carriers to respond and to sort of propose. So basically these are bespoke proposals. Again, one of the things that we're seeing is that tends to happen in the industry. Once the carriers respond, the broker typically needs to prepare a comparison, and that is a very manual and labor-intensive work, because you're typically opening up 4 to 6 different PDF documents, okay, and you sort of copy and pasting a lot of information and trying to sort of compare, so you're basically trying to create apples to apples comparison, and that's can take up to 12 hours per proposal, per comparison, which is quite a lot. It's obviously quite prone to human error, and we sort of digitize this, right? So we, well, with the help of certain AI technology and AI models, we're able to sort of ingest those proposals and actually create the comparisons automatically in a matter of minutes, and then output it in the form of Excel or PDF, but also a very interactive comparisons for the clients.
So at the end of the day, I mean, what would you say a successful implementation or client journey looks like? I mean, is it sort of the first time they're implementing real tech? Is it changing from sort of an antiquated legacy system to something more modern, combination of the above? Like what does it typically look like?
So I think it really depends on the region and the client that you work with. Sometimes the success is just as you said, just getting rid of a legacy tech, right? And just replacing it with something quite simple, but but something that's not gonna that's gonna carry you forward for the next 10 years. But I personally get always excited when we can automate something that is automatable, okay, and not for the sake of automating, but look, I seen people that do like just even that function that I mentioned earlier, like copy and pasting from proposals. Okay, I mean it's such a in my opinion mind-numbing task, right? And it can be automated, right? So the person that does that today, if you suddenly free up their hands, they can actually spend time on building the relationship with your client, right, and adding value somewhere else, right? In today's day and age, the value of brokers is being questioned, right? What value do they add, right? Do they are they actually even necessary, etc. And I do think that the answer is yes, okay. But the answer is really in that kind of consulted, they need to kind of act as consultants, right? They need to give the right advice, have that element, right? And if they spend a lot of their time doing manual data entries and just kind of doing these sort of quite tiresome and and quite burdening tasks, then the process is taking away from the consulting qualities, if you will.
And is in terms of the functionality of the product or the products, and in terms of how customers buy and kind of what go-to-market strategies are. I mean, does it? I mean, I find it interesting that you're in such a variety of markets, and I'm just curious about what it's like to try to manage that. At the end of the day, is it kind of a broker is a broker is a broker regardless of market, or are there
It's a great
nuances you
question.
have to account for?
Yeah, look, it is a great question, right? Look, I think there are certainly challenges with being in so many different markets and jurisdictions. I mean, from just simple kind of doing the business with certain countries, right? For example, China, right? Getting paid from China in terms of just kind of the process is quite, is sometimes quite. It's complex, right? It's not impossible, but it's complex, right? Then you obviously running platforms in the insurance industry, right, which is heavily regulated. You have a lot of local regulators that sometimes dictate what information you need to do. Obviously, we have the data sovereignty laws. So obviously, we need to worry about where the data is getting hosted, etc. And then you have the certain just sort of regional requirements, right? Or country-specific requirements, right? Who knew that, in places like China or Indonesia, the last name is actually not mandatory, for a person, because you have a lot of individuals that have got just one single name, right? So obviously, things like this you only implement or you only realize when you actually go into those different territories and start doing sort of those implementations. And also, if I sort of take a step back, one of the things that we've realized quite early on in the game is when it comes to our tech, right, our sort of own solutions, we were sort of presented with two options. Do we continue adjusting our tech so that it becomes one sort of globally fitting platform, okay? And we kind of keep building it that way, or do we kind of start forking and have a great sort of platform for China and great one for Singapore and great one? And we've actually decided for the second option because we really felt that going and we've seen it. I've seen it happen several times. Going the first option, you will end up with quite a mediocre platform that will work around the world, but it's going to be quite mediocre. Versus, we basically chose local versus global, right? Essentially, we a lot of our customers love the fact that if they need us to do something because a local regulation has changed, we can do it pretty quickly without a major impact on kind of the overall solution as a whole.
And so what does that mean in terms of like, what sort of remains a core module, or maybe a different way to phrase it? How do you construct kind of the building blocks of a platform in order to be able to do that?
So look, we do have the core module, right? That manages all of the key elements such as the workflows, the currency management of the various languages, etc., right? And to an extent, certain key workflows. But what we then have the ability to do is kind of build on top of that and just kind of override it at the local level, right? And override it in such a way where like there are no major limits, right? So if the customer comes and says, look, we need you apart from X, we need you to build, or your existing modules, we need you to build, something else into the platform. We have the ability to do that, yet still running off the kind of core common module. And at the same time, we're able to push the updates, to all of our customers through the core module. And yes, there are disadvantages to the model that we run. It's more maintenance for us, right? It's more, the manageability can become quite complex with large number of customers. But again, we're aware of that. It's a kind of conscious decision we took, and it seems to be working, right? I think a lot of customers are responding well to it.
And so I know, and we can get to it in a minute, known Helen for a while, and she's got an outpost in Ireland. And you mentioned coming into the U.S. market, which is where I'm based. So is it any different coming into, a larger kind of more I don't know if established is quite the right word, but certainly probably more competitive market like the U.S. versus, some of these emerging market, locations that you've had success in?
So U.S. market specifically tends to be a little bit, when it comes to insurance, it tends to be a little bit different to the rest of the world, right? Overall, right? So even if I compare to, let's say what I would call a mature market like a UK, to US, right? US tends to have a slightly different way of looking at things, right? And obviously the fact that there's at the state level, there's different legislations as well, that brings the complexity. Look, I think the entering market like that is I don't view that any differently to any other countries. I mean, ultimately, it is about kind of the learning and ins and outs of the business. Talking to the customers. Having the exposure to them, presenting yourselves. Okay, and if possible, and that's the strategy we've used many times elsewhere. If possible, have and scale through either the local distributors, okay, or with somebody with the local know-how, right? That can kind of guide us both to the ins and outs of how the business operates, how the business works in that given country, or introduce us to the right customers.
Got it. So, certainly since 2020, there's been a big move in the companies working remotely. It's evolved into working even for earlier stage companies, global best available talent, et cetera, et cetera. But you've been at this for 15 years. And so is this the way your organization has always operated, or has that been an evolution?
Correct. Yeah. We've always operated in a way where we were distributed. So like Teambase had, we worked with sort of our own employees being based elsewhere, in particular the tech talent, right? So just originally the company has been established in Dubai and UAE, and even though we do have some in-house tech based in Dubai, it is quite expensive to have the resources sit here. So we've always run the developers, the QA managers, etc., out of the different countries, right? So everywhere from India to Pakistan, we've even had teams in Argentina, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Romania. We've always operated over the sort of the Teams calls or Zoom calls. And yes, it is obviously, sometimes you can kind of view it as it is challenging to not be able to kind of see all of your colleagues, in one room and have, being able to go for lunch together, etc. So it's got those disadvantages. But at the same time, the fact that everyone's got quite a lot of flexibility, and they can, really work. Like, for example, one of the policies that we have internally is, I don't really care. We don't care really what hours somebody works, right? As long as they're available for daily stand-up, and then they can kind of work any number of hours they want anyway. And as long as their work gets done, that's fine. And I think that's the model that worked for us. And and that's kind of both internally, but then also like in terms of the customer acquisition, I think what I'm seeing personally is that the days where you had to meet your customers face to face, and had to fly all around the world, etc. Also kind of they're getting numbered, because we especially in the recent years, the number of deals that we've done without actually seeing the customers, all of the discussions, demos, etc. were over the Zooms and and over the kind of the video conferencing. I certainly believe that especially for the selling part, it would help if you can reach those customers physically, if you have the face-to-face contact. But it's not a must anymore.
And so I'm curious, in terms of you mentioned sort of, tech talent in various locations where maybe you can get, high quality people, but compensation levels are a little more attractive. Have you seen sort of any changes, or in terms of today's market for talent, are there particular roles that you're focused on, or different skill sets or types of roles that are critical, either in general today in a company like yours, or kind of based on the stage you're at and where you're looking to go next with the business?
Yeah. So look, in terms of the types of the roles, I don't think that's been kind of changing lately that much, right? Obviously, you look at the big the big game changer for us is AI, right? And being able, having somebody to leverage the AI component to understand it, etc., is certainly uh, a critical key to success. But I still think that your kind of bread and butter roles, such as developers, it's like just product managers, QA engineers, etc. Those are not going to go away, and they are very critical for us, right? And I think in terms of the what I see in terms of kind of the evolution of those roles is yeah, I think that I'm sort of seeing that the younger people are sort of entering the workforce with some amazing skill sets, right? So like I sometimes get mind blown by like sometimes fresh graduates that start working for us who have got amazing experience in both coding or QA or etc. So I mean, if anything, I would believe that the schooling system that's it's been criticized for such a long time. I think that they certainly are starting doing something right, because I think I see a lot of fresh grads that have got some amazing skills.
And so I'm curious a little bit about, with AI's ability to write code and um, insurance is obviously kind of um, a complex, highly regulated industry. I know you said certain things that are done are sort of mind-numbing, repetitive tasks and aren't necessarily that complicated, but still generally speaking, different lines of business, different types of customers, et cetera. It can get complicated. I'm just curious, like, do you view with some of these AI tools that are being built that kind of can enable people with domain expertise or product expertise to maybe not do everything that the most highly trained engineer can do, but maybe get 80% of the way there or 90% of the way there? Does that change the
For
way
sure.
you evolve
Yeah,
the business?
yeah, it's certainly heading there. I think that, but again, the way I view it, and maybe this is a bit of wishful thinking, but the way I look at it is, the companies like ours are not going to go away because we do have that domain expertise, right? We have those relationships with the customers, etc. And if anything, the AI will make it much easier for us to actually write those platforms, extend them, etc. Right? I mean, for me as a business owner, right, it's a great proposition. If I wanted to build, if I want to build a product, okay, and I have a choice of hiring 10 developers, or I have a choice of hiring 2 developers and a great AI tool. I'm definitely going to choose the second one. But also, again, if you take a step back, to an extent, it is a bit of an evolution of a technology as a whole, right? If I look at some of the things that we're doing today, right, we are, I think the last time we refreshed our platform was about 3 years ago, right? And if we wanted to do something similar, okay, when we started 15 years ago, it would have taken triple the amount of effort, if not more, or triple the amount of code to write, to be able to do the same thing that we've done now, in 2022. So I think the same thing comes. I mean, to me, the AI is really just the next step, right? Look, we certainly looking at the AI, even at the quality assurance, right? So we started to leverage a tool that can actually test on its own, etc., and give us a little bit more automation around the testing, which also obviously competes with the with the QA resources, right? I'm not averse to the AI. In fact, I think if anything, industry should embrace it, and that's and I think it's a good thing.
So if you look, say, I don't know how much you can look beyond, say, 24 months out these days with things evolving so rapidly right now. But when you look, say, 18 to 24 months out, what does success look like for Teambase, both from a product and customer, and then maybe also team standpoint as well?
So I think we definitely want to hit our kind of new customer acquisition and revenue targets. We do want to open up new territories, and I think I mentioned US being one of them. So I certainly hope that by this time we'll have several customers on our amongst our logos from the US. I think that the scaling of the team, right? And restructuring a little bit in terms of the size would be important. I think that we have 2 or 3 sort of new ideas for the products in the drawers at the moment, that we sort of keep taking out and keep putting back, etc. So I hope that what would be a success for me is if 24 months from now, again, we have a few of those implemented, because again, those are the gaps that we've sort of identified, and but at the same time, we purposely put it back into the drawer just to keep the focus on what we have, and not to kind of dilute our attention.
Got it. So one last question: if you were to look back, 15 years ago to when you were founding the business, is there one piece of advice you would give yourself, or one leadership lesson that you would give yourself as you were kind of starting on this path with Teambase?
I think it's the old saying that you read in every. I think you read it in every single business book. Okay, but it's hard to implement than it seems, and that is work on the business, not in the business. I think, to me, the transition from like being the tech founder that was involved in everything to kind of the next layer where there were first few people that I had to sort of trust to take certain tasks on their shoulders, etc. That took quite a while, and there was quite a bit of frustration, and I think it was quite a bit of loss of focus, right? I think that delegation to others, I would ask myself to let things go much quicker than I did, because I mean that was one of the first sort of big lessons, where I mean it led to exhaustion, etc. So it was a tough period to go from 2 people to 10. Okay, that was quite difficult. I mean the next step to the higher numbers is you already have the system, but from 2 to 10. It took quite some time to for those lessons to sink in.
All right, great. Robert, anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I think this is it. Yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
All right. Great. Well, Robert Koval,